Well, part 4. And as you can see, this is dry. And if you think it looks ugly now, just you wait and see. Actually, this is what I kind of expected it to be. Why it looks this way when it's midpoint and you're in process, I don't know, but any artist worth their salt will tell you they're going to have an ugly phase. I collected a rose leaf outside to show you how different, of course, it looks from the background so far. And a little bit about shape and structure. Now, I'm going for more of a loose background because if I put a lot of detail in the background, it's going to cause the rose, the bloom, to just kind of disappear into the background. So often you'll see artists maybe will have mostly blurry, but maybe 1 or 2 leaves that are prominent, and you can use these as either a template or even dip them in resist and put them down. There's all kinds of things you can do with a real leaf to help with your art, or just use it as a model. But because I'm going with the loose and going to do the next layer of the background, I mixed up some very dark green-blue background. I noticed with this ground that the water kind of soaks in. It makes it hard for me to do the really loose stuff without hard edges, such as right here. Now, there's an advantage to having these hard edges sometimes. It gives it a little bit of character, but generally most watercolor artists do not want that to happen. The hard edge you want is around things like the flower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet this down, do the best I can to lay down what I call the depth area. That will be the dark area around the flower. And something else I wanted to discuss. I was telling you I was going to try as many techniques as I could in this little experiment to really give this ground a test. Another technique used in watercolor is the idea of using a sharp point to engrave an area, because then when you paint over, the paint flows into that engraved area and causes a unique texture. And I'm going to try to find an area to use that in. I'm not going to use the other side because that's super sharp and I know that'll cut the paper away. Also, with the ground being a layer, if I scrape too hard, I'm going to end up exposing that nasty painting underneath. So at some point here, I'm going to try to find a spot, maybe here, because this would be like a forefront rose. I don't know if you can see that. It kind of resembles the vein work on the real rose. So I'm just going to put a few lines in, kind of to give it, I don't know, some texture, but not to be the prominent feature, because I think, like I say, this experiment, it's not meant to really look like something I would sell or, you know, gift somebody. This is just for our knowledge. So let me get to the next subject. When I was putting the loose stuff on, I prefer a brush like this, but I had to use this because I didn't realize from the water soaking how fast I had to work, and I hadn't dug this out yet. If I'd have dug this out, I'd have had to re-wet the whole thing again. But this is a mop, and it's a beautiful soft mop. It's definitely been worth the investment. I have not really given it much use, but it will get more use in the future. I was using a smaller one because my paintings were more tight, more detailed. So, enough jibber jabber. Let me wet this down and start putting this area around the rose. Now, I might finish some of this background off camera simply because it will take a very long time to complete it, and I don't want you to be bored to death. Now, that looks super duper dark. I will admit it does. But when watercolor dries, if it's dark, it tends to dry lighter, and if it's light, it tends to dry sometimes darker. That's not always the case. So I'm laying down this kind of wet because I'm going to use the power of the water. I'm going to wet this and let it pull away. And if I end up with any hard lines, I'm going to make use of them. Now my light is coming in kind of from this direction, so my darker area needs to be on this side. So you can see where I thin it out, it's not near as dark. Some of the rest of it won't be. See those ridges? They're showing up. Now let me show you those ridges I cut into that. What happens? If you can see it. They're awful small. I don't know if you can see them or not. Anyway, let me get this water moving. Don't want that to dry with a bunch of hard lines. I can do some work with hard lines, but if I don't have to, I don't like to. There you go. The lamp is kind of reflecting off of it, and I found that the filming of it, when I had it with what I call bokeh by just doing the shaded background, did not show up very well on film. In fact, it kept looking worse the more I would get more done, more leaves and more background. So I went with my original idea, the bokeh format, and I just darkened everything so it would come out better on film, and made the little bokeh circles. Now I did make them a little bit brighter than I would normally do for a painting you would look at in real life, because it does not show up very well on the camera. I did some testing and it just really faded away. You can see where I tested it on the paper, or the paper tape ahead of time, to see how dark it had to be to show up, and so I came up with this.